Alright, Ronan MMA, welcome back to the channel. Yes, I am doing another Kiiyon Kimura video. I'm sorry if you are getting sick of these, but I'm going to continue doing them every time he makes a bad take. Because one, these videos get more views than any of my other videos. My pre-Lewis Spivak video got like 29 views, whereas these ones get in the hundreds every time, and he keeps making bad takes, so I need to address them because I can't let this slide. The guy has way too many subscribers for these bad takes to go unchecked, and yeah, some of his fans have called him out in the comment section, but I can't stand them. I can't stand it. He's horrible. He makes horrible videos. Well, no, sorry, he doesn't make horrible videos. He gives horrible takes, and the fact that he has so many subscribers is a bad thing, I think. Now, someone in my comment section, the last time I did a video, said, I think Kiiyon Kimura is good for new fans, but I don't think that, he's the smartest guy or something along those lines. I would have agreed maybe a while ago before he started doing these hot take videos. But the last thing I think that a new or potentially new UFC fan or MMA fan needs to see is somebody saying that the entirety of the UFC and the fan base is racist, right? Because there are people who will see that video, who have subscribed to him, and will agree with him and believe what he's saying, and, potentially not watch the UFC because they think that it's racist. And he's made another horrible take here, in my opinion. So we're gonna talk about it now. Before we do, please like and subscribe. I'm going to thank you in advance. Thank you very much for your subscription. So don't be the kind of guy that, doesn't do a job that he's already been thanked for. And don't be the kind of guy that steals, purses from old ladies in nursing homes, because I can't enforce it the same way they can, okay? So don't do that. So, Kiiyon Kimura in his latest installment of his hot take videos did a hot take where he said that Colby Covington is the most overrated fighter in the UFC. I think it's fair to call him an active at the moment, but I don't think it's fair to call him the most overrated fighter. And he gave horrible, horrible reasons for why. That, this guy's thinking is so surface level that he doesn't go past the one thing he's talking about. Because if you use his logic for other fighters, there are so many fighters that you would end up calling overrated for the dumbest reasons. So he said that essentially what he thinks makes fighters overrated are fighters that are holding up their division. Okay? And he gives two examples besides Colby, one of which I agree with, the other one I don't. He said Michael Chandler, who I did a video talking about this when he refused the Arman Tsarukyan fight. Michael Chandler's got 2 wins in the UFC against a washed-up old Tony Ferguson and against Dan Hooker in his first fight in the UFC. He should not be in the top 5, absolutely. Dustin Poirier, on the other hand, has done nothing to lose his spot in the division, and he is not inactive either. So I'm not understanding where he's getting that from. But I would like to ask Kiiyon Kimura, is Francis Ngannou an overrated fighter? Because this is where his logic leads us. Is it somebody like Francis Ngannou, or better yet, a better example, Khabib Nurmagomedov? Okay, Khabib might be the only champion in UFC history to require 2 interim title belts in between his defenses, because he would fight once a year. Is Khabib holding up the championship spot because he only wants to fight once a year? Should we strip a fighter of their championship belt if they're only going to fight once a year? Because it hasn't even been a full year since Colby Covington fought, to be fair to Colby Covington. Now, I got accused in a video I did a couple days ago of being a Colby Covington fanboy, which is hilarious. And if they thought I was, then this video is really going to do the trick. But Francis hadn't fought in 13 months before he decided to leave the UFC. And they did 1 interim title. Fine. Khabib did it on a regular basis. That's a horrible, horrible metric for determining whether or not somebody is an overrated fighter. And then he brought up his record, okay? And he used examples of his wins that he views as not being very impressive to keep up with his spot at number 2 in the welterweight division now. I can't understand how then in his very next fucking sentence, the guy cites Bilal Muhammad as somebody who is like, he literally said that Bilal Muhammad should be essentially have Colby Covington's spot. My camera's out of focus. It's fucking annoying, dude. Happens every video. Okay, so he's basically shitting on Colby's record because he says his most recent wins are, he forgot some, by the way, but he goes, RDA and Robbie Lawler. Now, first of all, when Colby Covington beat RDA was like going on an absolute tear at 170, and I believe it was him and RDA that fought for an interim title, if I'm not mistaken. So it wasn't like when he beat RDA was where he's at now. He was at the top of the welterweight division. Okay. Secondly, Colby Covington beat Damian Maia 5 years ago in 2017, when Damian Maia was still also at the top of his game, in the top 5, fighting for a title against Tyron Woodley. Backpacking Kamaru Usman before the dumb fuck ref decided to separate them, which led Kamaru Usman to beating Damian Maia. But let's just use the fighters that he gave his examples as people that aren't doing this, okay? He left out the fact that he beat Tyron Woodley in between his 2 Kamaru Usman losses, right? So he stayed active. He wasn't just waiting on the rematch for the title shot. He went and beat the brakes off of Tyron Woodley. And while that win may have not aged the best because of what we've seen Tyron Woodley do since then, at the time, Tyron Woodley had only lost to Kamaru Usman and Gilbert Burns recently. So it wasn't like he was the most washed up Tyron Woodley, okay? And Colby Covington beat the shit out of him. And then Colby Covington, obviously, most recently, beat the shit out of Jorge Masvidal for 5 rounds. How can he be considered an overrated fighter when he lost to Kamaru, beat Tyron Woodley, and then lost to Kamaru again, who Kamaru Usman is like one of the best pound-for-pound fighters on the planet. One of the most dominant champions in welterweight history. Beat everybody. Is Gilbert Burns overrated because he lost to Kamaru Usman? I don't think so. But so Bilal Muhammad is who he cites as somebody who should be in this these top spots. Now, I didn't realize how unimpressive Bilal Muhammad's record was recently. I don't mean his record as a whole. I mean the level of competition that he's been facing. His most recent win is against Sean Brady, who may not have even been in the top 15. I can't recall. If he was, he had just cracked the top 15. He had just got a number beside his name when Bilal Muhammad beat him last. And now Bilal Muhammad is in talks for a title eliminator fight, essentially, against Colby Covington, who, by the way, accepted the fight, which is hilarious because he must have made this video before that news came out. But actually, no, he didn't, because he said, there are some talks that Colby might be fighting Bilal Muhammad. But if we take a look at their records, let's contrast them. Compare and contrast a little bit, okay? Bilal Muhammad, I wrote down here, okay? Colby Covington's resume is pretty comparable to a lot of guys at the top of the division. So I already talked about when he beat Damian Maia, not in 2021. When Bilal Muhammad did, in Damian Maia's quite literally last fight when he was probably 40 or older, and had lost to Gilbert Burns, had lost to Colby Covington, had lost to Kamaru Usman by then. Like, he had lost to all these guys except Ben Askren. So, it was not a very notable win for the time. Obviously, Damian Maia is a good feather to have in your cap, but like I said, his last fight in the UFC, very old, had already lost a bunch recently. It was not like when Colby Covington beat Damian Maia. So right there, we're seeing that Colby's record is pretty comparable. Okay. Also, by the way, Bilal Muhammad is like one of the main guys pushing this narrative that he hasn't fought anybody in like the modern times, top of the division, which is hilarious because then when I went and looked at fucking Bilal Muhammad's record, I was like, wait, what? You're saying this, dude? I heard him say it on Joe Rogan, and I was like, Jesus Christ, okay. Then he beats up a 40-year-old Wonder Boy. Now that's a good win. But Wonder Boy, as we've seen time and time again, really only does well when he's got someone willing to play ball. I love Wonder Boy. He's one of my favorite fighters. He's such a fucking nice guy. Everything about him. Just so wholesome, right? But we know what his kryptonite is. We've seen it time and time again. And it's a good win, but it's not, like, title worthy. You know what I mean? Vicente Luque is a good win, especially since he got that one back. Because, you know, Luque had beaten him earlier in his career. But, guys, that's about it. That's about it. Vicente Luque, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson at 40, Damian Maia at probably 40 plus. I'm not sure how old Damian Maia is. He's old and was at the very, very literally end of his career last fight. And Sean Brady, dude. Now, Sean Brady had some hype behind him and was a good up-and-comer, but he was not top 5. He was not top 10 even. Like, if we're being honest, Colby's resume is leagues above Bilal Muhammad's, okay? And yeah, he's lost to Kamaru Usman twice, but again, like, there's no shame in... It's understandable. They're understandable losses. Kamaru Usman is dominant, champion, pound for pound, you know, bigger than Colby by a lot. And I saw somebody comment in one of my other videos that weight bullying is a moot point because of weigh-ins. And I didn't address it in the comment section because I don't like to do that, because certain guys who, especially guys who have complimented me on previous videos, I don't want to go and type something out to you that has no tone or context to it or anything like that. But it's not a moot point, because they don't weigh in the day of the fight. They weigh in 24 hours previously. It absolutely makes a difference. Kamaru Usman probably has at least 20 pounds on Colby Covington when they enter the cage. Okay, Dustin Poirier probably outweighs a lot of his opponents. Like, Khamzat Chimaev definitely weighed more than Gilbert Burns. It's not a moot point. Weight bullying is a thing, you know. Marvin Vettori weighs fucking 235 pounds when he's not in fight camp. You know, it's a real thing. It's not a moot point. Okay. So he lost to Kamaru Usman, which is fine. And the second loss should have been a draw, without a doubt. People can call me a fanboy all they want, dude. The Weasel did a very comprehensive video on it. He slows down every single exchange, counts the significant strikes, takes all of it. Colby Covington won rounds 3, 4, 5, or should have, whereas Kamaru Usman won 1 and 2 with a 10-8 in round 2. Fine. Should have been a draw. And it is impressive because at the time, we're just watching Kamaru Usman like run through dudes, start finishing guys, and we're like, oh shit, dude. And yeah, he finished Colby in his first fight, but last, you know, there was not a lot of time left. The stoppage was a little weird in my opinion, but despite all that, like what he did to Gilbert Burns, what he did to Jorge Masvidal, and then we see Colby go out there and fight him to what should have been a draw. I don't understand how somebody can be called overrated for this. Like, we haven't even seen Bilal Muhammad fight the top of the division yet. Not a single guy. What? Okay. And Bilal Muhammad's often heralded as a guy that's underrated, who can't get fights and this and that. And then we've got his next example is Khamzat Chimaev. Dude, are you kidding me? Khamzat Chimaev's had like what, 5 fights in the UFC? Even if he has had more than that, which I think like 6 at most, I can't think off the top of my head, but hasn't been consistent in a single weight class, right? Like he fought at 170 and then 185 and then 170 and then 185 and then 170. And he's missed weight at 170 twice. And he's saying, oh, Colby should have just accepted that fight. If they're making if they're making Colby Covington versus Bilal Muhammad, then it was not Colby Covington that was not accepting that fight with Khamzat Chimaev. There's something going on behind the scenes that we don't see. Probably Khamzat's team telling him you should probably fight at 185 because you can't fucking make the weight. And the only win that Khamzat has, that's notable at 170 pounds is Gilbert Burns, which is a fucking good win, by the way. But it wasn't like a dominant win like what we saw Kamaru Usman do to him. Right? Yeah, Kamaru got hurt at the beginning of round 1, and then he dominated and beat the shit out of Gilbert Burns and made him fucking cry almost. And I love Gilbert Burns, man. I wanted Gilbert to beat Kamaru, but he didn't. And Khamzat's fight with him was pretty close. Now, there's people that think that Gilbert should have won. I disagree with that. I think it was pretty clear 2-1 for Khamzat, but still, they were all very close rounds. And Gilbert hurt him. Gilbert dropped him, dude. Like, Khamzat Chimaev has not earned a top spot the way that Colby Covington has. And I think I could see that going into Colby Covington's decision-making here. Even let's just say that he was the one to say no to Khamzat Chimaev. You want me to say yes to a guy who hasn't really proved that he can consistently make the weight, might show up 8 pounds over and just fucking laugh about it. Okay? And has only beaten one notable guy at my weight class, has been jumping between weight classes, and you want me to fight this guy when it took me years to get where I'm at. And a bunch of good wins. Okay? And then I could see that same decision making leading Colby Covington to saying yes to Bilal Muhammad, because Bilal Muhammad has proven that he can make the weight consistently. He can win in the weight class consistently. And the guy was acting like Colby's handpicking his fights. Like, he even said that Bilal Muhammad is a tough fight for Colby, which I think it is. It's a great matchup. I am excited for that fight. But Colby Covington, he's not handpicking opponents. He's fought the best guy in Kamaru Usman twice. Former champion Tyron Woodley, like Damian Maia, Jorge Masvidal. All these fights, these are not... If anything, he said no to Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, dude. Wonderboy Thompson's been calling him out. I mean, I just can't. This guy's fucking got zero brain. Every take he has is so surface level, and he doesn't think, well, okay, if I apply the standard to one guy, then, what am I going to do to guys like Khabib? Or shit like that. Like, it makes no sense. I can't. This was why in the first video I did about him calling the fan base racist that I brought up Colby Covington, because I think that Colby Covington, for a lot of people, is fun and easy to hate, and it's popular to hate on him because the media paints him in a certain light. And I do strongly think it's because of his race, because there are a lot of views that Kamaru Usman shares with Colby Covington that he does not ever get called out for. Like, Kamaru Usman, as I said in my first video that I did on Kiiyon Kimura, is a MAGA guy. Henry Cejudo is a MAGA guy. Like, there's a bunch of dudes. Colby's the only one that gets shit on like this. And I want to ask a bunch, like, dude, are we... If Colby Covington was, like... It drives me crazy, dude. Khabib, if you were to look inside Colby Covington's head and Khabib's head, and you were to see... Which views do these two gentlemen have that more align with Western society? I would imagine Colby Covington is a lot closer to you, even if you were like staunchly on the left, than Khabib Nurmagomedov is. Yet Colby Covington gets shit on for his views all the time. Because there are certain shields that someone can wear that make you kind of like exempt from criticism. And it's kind of annoying, dude. And Bilal Muhammad wears that same shield that Khabib does. Now, there's a certain term, I don't want to say it. I know that these fans go crazy when you talk shit. I'm not talking shit about anybody's faith or religion or anything like that. But I am saying that when Andrew Tate came out and said he was now Muslim, I think that was a brilliant business decision by him. It didn't really help because he ended up going to jail anyways, but you would no longer be able to criticize his opinions or views on women's without being labeled as Islamophobic. And I just think that Colby Covington has all these characters that the media has told you to hate and attack, and that's why it's so easy for people to shit on him. How can you say the guy's overrated? Like, is Leon Edwards overrated? If we're being honest, there's not a lot of these guys at the top of the division that have a resume comparable to his. Especially at the time that he beat the fighters that he did beat. And I'm fucking sick and tired of this narrative. How is Colby Covington more overrated than Michael Chandler? Colby Covington has proved himself in the UFC time and time again at championship level. Whereas Michael Chandler's knocked out Dan Hooker and Tony Ferguson. I'm not going to stop this tirade, dude. I will not stop until this man's subscribers come over to me or he just goes away. I really wish he would address people that disagree with him, because like I've laid out a pretty decent argument to rebut his points that took me all of 10 minutes first thing in the morning to write out. I mean, you could, by his logic, you could call some of the best ever his GOAT, GSP. At one point was pretty inactive. At one point was pretty boring. You know, you could call, I mean, dude, the list is endless. Like I said, Khabib, inactive, once a year, maybe. Francis, once a year, maybe. Stipe, once a year, maybe. Why is he not calling any of these guys overrated, bro? I think it's because he's virtue signaling. And this is what I want to stay out of MMA. I don't want this virtue signaling shit here. This sport is like the last place in mainstream sports or media that like this is not taken over by. And just to make a quick comparison to a sport, I don't watch any other sports, but there are some edge cases where I hear about it or I see a highlight or whatever the fuck. And I remember one, Kevin Durant. I think it was his Achilles that tore mid-fight. Or, see, that's how fucking fight brained I am. Any sport, I'm like, yeah, mid-fight, dude. No. Mid-game in the NBA Finals against the Toronto Raptors, whatever it was in his leg that popped sounded like somebody snapped a carrot. I think he was out for pretty much the rest of the entire next year. Is Kevin Durant overrated because he was inactive? Like, you guys have no idea what's going on in these fighters' lives. Colby Covington could very well have the same injury that Francis Ngannou has, and none of us have any idea. He could have tore his ACL in training. Now, it's probably not what happened, but I would also add this. When you are going through court battles, in which he is, and you can agree or disagree with why he's doing that, it would not be a good idea to claim head trauma, concussions, any of this shit, and then go perform your job duties as a cage fighter when you're trying to sue a guy. Okay? Your lawyer would advise against that strongly. So now it's been enough time where he could have said, look, I had just beaten Jorge Masvidal. I was in talks for a title shot, or at least a number one contender spot. I could have had 2-3 fights by now, right? I may have very well been champion. I could have possibly made this amount of money in this time, and Jorge Masvidal will have to pay him a fuckload of money. And that's just like how you sue somebody. He couldn't go and jump in the cage fucking 2 weeks later and then still try and get money from Jorge Masvidal. Like, it doesn't work like that. But we'll find out if he's a better... No, not even, dude. I was going to say a better term would have been overranked, or because, you know, if you don't like the fact that he's number 2 in the division, I would still ask you, who has beaten anybody in the top 5 that deserves that spot more, first of all? But second of all, it would make more sense to say that you don't like where he's at in the rankings instead of calling him overrated in terms of his skills, when we've seen time and time again what he's capable of. So I'm going to leave it there. Kiiyon Kimura's a dumb fuck. Okay? He needs less fans. He should not have as many fans as he has. There's no way. And he really needs to figure out how to stop biting his own tongue. And I know it's kind of mean, but it's fucking... Come on, dude. Come on. I don't want him to be the introduction to the sport that new fans get. new fans get. Yeah, because I think it'll breed more hate fans, basically. I think the way that he talks about the sport now, the takes that he gives would lead somebody who hasn't been paying attention to think very poorly of the sport. And I don't think that that's a good thing, no matter what level of casual you are. So, this has been me, defecating all over Kiiyon Kimura once again. Let me know in the comments if you think I'm off on this take. And please don't forget to like and subscribe. I've already thanked you. I'll thank you again. Thank you very much for subscribing. Don't not do it, okay? I'll see you all later. Next video, I'm going to do the recap for the fights last night. See ya.